This is Phil. Welcome back to the show. I am here with Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Who is back in black.
It's so nice to be back and in black.
Yeah, after a week of blue. You were blue last week.
I was blue last week. All weekend I was largely gray and white.
Really? Yeah. And blue all over? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Christian Taylor.
Hey, why are you giggling at me?
You're olive.
Do you think
That's olive.
It even has olives on the scarf.
These are circles.
Did you get that somewhere?
I
on
did.
Your travels?
I did.
Where?
Italy.
That came from Italy?
Mm-hmm.
Where they grow olives.
That's fantastic. And they were olive. Oh, our neighbors are opening their garage door, so I'm going to sing the theme song to cover up the noise. Here we go. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. And Christian, too.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Christian. We've got no guests because we are all the guests that is needed by you. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. Do you remember the woman who told us that the theme song saved her life?
I do remember
Yeah, 'cause
that.
she was on a bike ride from hell, and they had like 10 extra miles to go that she didn't know
I feel
about.
bad
and she
for
just
her.
kept singing, "Hey, it's the podcast," over and over again while she pedaled, and the theme song.
It's like a meditative
saved her.
chant.
Yeah, like the guy who got trapped under the boulder for 227 hours, had to cut his arm off. I think he was listening to our podcast.
That's how I feel when I listen to our podcast.
I feel like cutting off your arm.
That's a terrible thing for you to say.
I
I'm
just was
sad.
wondering, is it going to be 3 years this spring or 4?
It'll be 4.
I think it's 4.
Because we're at 178. This is number 178 or 79.
I cannot believe we have been going this
that's already
long.
past 3 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is pretty crazy. I really am shocked. People
Shocked
continue to
and
listen.
slightly embarrassed at the sight of Larry in a towel.
Oh, I know. I remember that.
Yeah, that was a quote. So obviously, we're thinking about Paris. We're thinking about what happened there. That made for an interesting weekend.
It was a sad weekend.
Yeah, it was
I
a
had
sad
a friend
weekend.
in France, and her daughter was right by where it happened. And so
Seriously?
it was very scary for us. Yeah, it was a friend that we met when we were in France for Hunter's thing,
okay.
and she's coming
Wow.
to spend Christmas with us.
Wow.
And her daughter was in danger, so that was scary.
Wow, that is scary. It's interesting. I think it's interesting because you all, I assume, know about the terrorist attacks in Paris last week, and 129 people
Yeah,
died.
there's apparently a lot more that are injured.
Yeah,
So that number
some
could change.
Seriously injured. It's interesting because if you look at 9/11, obviously 9/11 was much bigger in terms of casualty, but there was something different about 9/11 in that, it took years to plan. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of work. And because of all the changes that have happened, it's not very likely to happen again. Mm-hmm. So that's not really, that's kind of like a once in a generation sort of event. Whereas this is just guys in cars with guns.
This is what has been happening in Israel, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem for decades.
Yeah.
But now it's coming to Europe.
Yeah. So I guess the question is this the beginning of a new normal? And I guess this is what, the French Parliament's trying to figure out.
Well, and it's only less than a year after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, which were similar in their format, although different in origin.
So, of course, people are jumping in on it all over the place. Have you heard of Franklin Graham?
Rings a bell.
Yeah. He tweeted, "Islam is at war with us."
Yeah.
And then he didn't stop. He tweeted again. He said, "As we pray for France, we also need to pray for wisdom for the world's leaders that Islam will be stopped."
So
We need to stop a whole world religion.
he probably has not heard, or maybe he is choosing not to remember, that the reports are coming out of Paris now that these attackers deliberately targeted Muslims in Paris.
They did.
They did.
I missed that.
How
did.
did they know
So-
that
Well, they were
Muslims
looking
would be...
because I saw this on CNN the other night.
Yeah.
They intentionally are going after Muslims who they feel have assimilated and accommodated to Western civilization rather than holding to the strict
Okay.
tenets of Islam. So, and I heard President Obama even earlier today in his press conference from Turkey talking about, the vast majority of victims of ISIS are Muslims.
Right, right.
So to say Islam is at war with us is just an asinine overstatement.
Yeah. Ed Stetzer, what is Ed Stetzer?
He's a researcher at Lifeway.
At Lifeway, that's right. He's the head of Lifeway Research. He tweeted in response and said, I want to see Muslims come to Christ, as yes, they want to win me to Islam, and we can't do that by going to war with 1 billion people. So he was fairly critical of Franklin Graham's comments. I think Franklin Graham might need to join Adele. Did you hear Adele announced 2 weeks ago that she's no longer allowed to tweet
Oh, really?
on her own account?
What was she doing?
She was guilty of drunk tweeting.
Oh, no.
And so her managers, now if she has a tweet, she has to send it to them, and then they will tweet it.
That's probably not a bad policy for everyone.
Good point.
To have a personal tweet accountability partner.
It would be nice if Twitter, the company, would let a certain number of people vote as to who must be intermediated from their Twitter account.
You know how if you get a DUI, sometimes they might put one of those breathalyzer things on your car?
You get points on your license. You get points against your license. Oh, a breathalyzer to let you turn your car on.
Right, you have to breathe into it to prove you're not
Wait
drunk.
a second, I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to breathe in your car. You have to blow in the tailpipe to start it.
No, it's different than that. But they put a device on your car where you actually have to breathe into it to prove you don't have any alcohol in your system before the car will start.
That's pretty smart.
I think
Shouldn't all cars
they
have
need a
that?
Twitter breathalyzer. So that you actually have to breathe into it before you're allowed to send a tweet to prove you are not drunk.
What would it be detecting in Franklin Graham?
I probably couldn't say that on our podcast.
Oh, my. But we're forgetting something, and this is interesting. An Indian blogger wrote a piece, Karuna Azera Parikh. Do you follow Karuna Azera?
Are you asking me because I'm half Indian, Phil?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We all follow each other, just like, all Indian immigrants come with a postgraduate degree in medicine.
You guys are terrible.
And we all run Quickie Marts.
So Karuna wrote a piece and posted it to her Facebook page, and it has gone viral. But she wrote from India, it is not Paris we should pray for, it is the world. It is a world in which Beirut, reeling from bombings 2 days before Paris, is not covered in the press. A world in which a bomb goes off at a funeral in Baghdad and not one person's status update says Baghdad because not one white person died in that fire. Pray for the world that blames a refugee crisis for a terrorist attack, that does not pause to differentiate between the attacker and the person running for the very same thing you are, running from the very same thing you are. Pray for a world where people walking across countries for months, their only belongings upon their backs, are told they have no place to go. Say a prayer for Paris by all means, but pray more for the world that does not have a prayer for those who no longer have a home to defend, for a world that is falling apart in all corners and not simply in the towers and cafes we find so familiar. That was interesting.
Well, sounds like she thinks it's the end of civilization.
Well, I think it's actually a valid point.
I don't think so.
Well,
A lot of people probably don't remember, was it 2013, there was that attack on the shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yeah.
Where
I do remember that.
lots of people were killed, and it was Islamic terrorists that did that as well.
Right.
But you didn't see the same calls for solidarity and changing of your Twitter icons and all that to sympathize with Nairobi.
We don't seem to mind when they, I'm using air quotes, mess up their society.
Yeah, but the problem is Nairobi is a primarily Christian city.
Yeah, but
it's not a Muslim.
Africa.
Well, that's the point.
It's
they're brown
Africa.
people or black people.
They're not. They're them.
Beirut 2 days before Paris. They're brown people. But when it's white people who go to rock concerts, well, now let's all pull out the stops and show our support. And again, not to diminish anything that's happened in Paris, it's horrible. But this is a global epidemic, and it's affecting a lot of people, other than just white Europeans.
Well, and what I wonder is clearly. It is the Islamic extremists versus the rest of the world, right? I mean, can we say that? Because no, I'm saying they are indiscriminately targeting in every country.
Well,
They're not.
No, they're not.
They're not.
That's what's interesting.
They have done nothing in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Well, they've got other problems in Bangladesh.
Bangladesh has their own problems. The Islamic State is not one of them. They're targeting the countries that are targeting them.
In what way?
France is bombing the Islamic State. If ISIS did bring down that Russian airliner, it's because Russia is bombing the Islamic State.
Mm-hmm.
So
in their minds.
No, Russia is.
In the real world of real bombs.
Russia has an offensive strategy against ISIS.
Okay.
They're dropping bombs. France is dropping bombs on the Islamic State.
The United
America
States
is dropping bombs on the Islamic State. So they want to fight back. And that's why you just sent out an article where Marco Rubio, was criticized for saying this is a clash of civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they hate, and you hear this a lot.
Right.
From people on the political right, they hate our freedom. That's why they're mad at us.
They hate the fact that we let women drive cars and go to school.
Yeah, and the Atlantic pointed out that women drive cars in Costa Rica, but they don't care.
So are you saying that the Islamic State is, if no one was attacking them, then there would be peace?
No.
Where?
With the Islamic State.
But they're trying to take over territory. They have
Right.
The issue is it's geopolitical. It's not a clash of civilizations. They are trying to build a new caliphate in the Middle East, and so they want to take over territory in the Middle East. They don't care about France unless France tries to stop them from achieving their objectives in the Middle East.
Well, what if we just gave them a big section and said, you can have this to set up whatever you want?
Now, whose section would you propose that we give them?
I don't know, but since everybody in the world is like having issues with them, then we could all get together as a world.
Is anyone using North Dakota?
And decide.
Christian has a little proposal.
Isn't there an outpost somewhere in Russia or
here's where that
Asia?
Here's where that logic falls apart. There was an interesting article written last year. I think it's still probably the hottest, most read article on the Atlantic, called "What ISIS Really Wants."
Okay.
Oh yes.
And this reporter went in and started looking at what is this particular stridently fundamentalistic form of Islam teach, and he started looking at all over the world, different people from Australia, England, the Middle East. And it's we talked about this on a prior podcast, but it's an apocalyptic vision. If you could imagine evangelicals in the 1970s and 80s with the late great planet Earth and Jesus is coming back and all that fervor that fueled a lot of American evangelicalism, well, there's a similar thing going on in a part of Islam, which is saying, hey, these are the end times, and we need to usher in what is going to happen. And that's what ISIS is actually founded on. And the idea is we need to establish an Islamic state, a caliphate, a geographic region where we can completely institute Sharia law in its most extreme forms. And they also intentionally want to provoke a war with the West because they believe that the Christian West must go to war against this Islamic State. And believe it or not, they believe the Islamic State must lose. And
their eschatology.
That's their eschatology, that they have to be defeated. And at that moment of defeat, they will be saved by God, who will send, believe it or not, Jesus Christ in his second coming to save the Islamic State. So even if we gave them a bunch of land and said, yeah, take it, do what you want with it, kill all the Christians there, have your harems, whatever, that wouldn't keep them content because their ultimate goal is exactly to provoke a war. So here's the catch-22. They have these terrorist attacks going on in the West, and so many in the West are going, well, we need to just go at them. We need to have a huge ground. Well, that's exactly what they want. And if we do it, it's only going to increase their recruitment because they'll be able to say to everyone through social media, see, we are the ones who are ushering in the fulfillment of prophecy. Come join us. So it's this
But if it's not done, they will continue.
Exactly. So what do? That's the problem.
Eschatologically speaking, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Bingo.
Clearly.
Thank you. Put it on a T-shirt.
And when you have an enemy that is obviously not afraid to die
Right.
and suicide attacks.
That is-
what deterrent can
that
you?
is
You can't put
troubling.
economic sanctions on them and say, now if you don't stop blowing yourselves up, we're going to take away your medicines. It's not going to work.
But yesterday or this morning, we blew up like 116 of their oil tankers, trucks that haul oil, because that's how they fund themselves.
Partly.
Partly. The other way is by selling children. I don't know how else do they
Well,
fund themselves?
Here's a. I sound like a broken record. Follow the money. Why?
Football? Is it the American football industry?
There are cities in the Middle East that are incredibly materialistic,
Yeah.
in certain ways very westernized,
Dubai?
very decadent. Dubai, Abu Dhabi,
Abu Dhabi?
numerous others, Riyadh, parts of Qatar, Kuwait City. Why does ISIS never attack those cities?
That's
There's-
where they get their money.
There, hundreds of thousands of Westerners go through the airport at Dubai, including me last year,
Yeah.
all the time. They're not highly protected. They're in their backyard. Why are those sites never attacked?
Because they have better security?
Because a lot of the money that funds these crazy radicals are coming from highly wealthy Muslims in some of these centers in the Middle East. So it's sort of, we're going to fund you guys to go stick it to the
Maybe
west.
we should all move there.
So we need to bomb
But
Dubai?
you're not
No,
you're
we
not
just
going to
need to move
bomb
there.
our backyard
be
because
safe.
we have an economic interest that we want to maintain
Right.
here. So don't do it here, but go do it out there.
Now, the Islamic State is Sunni.
Right.
Correct? It's kind of the remnants of what got knocked down in Iraq by us when we invaded and stomped all over
That
them.
didn't go well.
It had unintended consequences.
Because wars always come out
well.
exactly the way we expect.
War is usually so predictable.
Right.
I don't know what went wrong. But it is Sunni. Saudi Arabia is Sunni. Iran is Shia. So
And right now, Iraq, the government is
is
Shia.
Shia, right. So that's some of the tension. So one of the big mistakes there, and this is even unfortunately what the mistake that Franklin Graham is making, is not recognizing the diversity within an ideology.
Right.
You know, so it's like looking at Christianity and say, boy, Christianity has a huge problem with abusing altar boys. Well, that's really a broad generalization. You know,
Because in my church, there's no altar.
Or
So
boys.
there's no boys, no altar boys. So,
But
you know.
now there is some truth in that if you go to certain parts of Christianity, there is a sex abuse scandal. But you can't paint with that broad brush. And we would say that right away. Well, that's
Right.
ridiculous. I'm a Protestant. We don't have any. But we do the exact same thing to the Islamic world. You know, so you have a huge problem with all your crazy radicals. I would love, just to see, just go to. If Franklin Graham would go to his local imam at his nearest mosque and just say, "I'm praying that you are stopped," the guy would be so confused. Stopped from doing what? Stopped from ending Western civilization. Unless it's 1 out of every 1,000 imams in the West that actually have a radical ideology, the guy is probably doing more soup kitchens than he is with promoting radicalism. But we don't see that. We want it to be black and white. We want to know that we're the good guys and those are the bad guys, and then we get eschatological about it. And this is, we're headed towards the end times, and it's probably going to be us versus them, and Jesus is going to come and kick their butts. So let's start the butt kicking ahead of time.
Well, it seems to me the only thing that we can count on in this formula is that it's probably not going to stop. There are a lot of
probably
people
not
that
gonna-
say
yeah.
we need to be protected from this and trying to
Yeah.
do all of these different things so that it will never happen again. And that sounds like a very unrealistic expectations for America to
Right.
think that.
So, should we close our borders? Should we shut down immigration?
Well, we still have a lot of people inside of our borders that are associated with.
Yeah. Now, Ted Cruz just said that we should only allow Christians to come in from the Middle East, that there should be a religion test.
Really?
Yeah, like yesterday. Others have said no Syrian refugees at all. No Syrian refugees. France just shut their borders. The states of Alabama and Michigan both just declared they will take no Syrian refugees Alabama went first because obviously when Muslim terrorists want to strike at the heart of Western decadence, they think, let's blow up Alabama. And then Detroit. Once we're done
Too late.
with Alabama, they get to Detroit. Oh, you got here first? It's already happened. But that's concerning to me as a Christian, with the notion of Christian hospitality, that there are, 5 million Syrian refugees trying to find places that have been displaced by the war, and we know for sure that one of them or one of their passports showed up in Paris in the attack, and to say, so we will not help any of you because we know at least one of you was a bad egg and we don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, I mean,
Boy, it's all a sticky wicket.
on one level, the immigration system in this country is significantly broken in a lot of ways, and it does need to be reformed and tightened and security raised. But you're right. On the flip side, it would be a violation of our national character to not show compassion and mercy toward refugees.
Our Christian character?
Who are fleeing from the very same ideology and terror that we all are frightened by too.
Right.
On the flip side, if I can talk out of both sides of my mouth,
Please.
I do think it's problematic that more Arab states are not stepping up and dealing with the problem in their own region.
Yeah.
Why isn't Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or some of these other countries that have a great deal of wealth stepping in and saying, hey, we will take more immigrant or
Well,
refugees?
what do they say?
They're taking very little. I mean, right now, Saudi Arabia is engaged in a significant conflict against Yemen, in which they're using all U.S. supplied military armaments. They have a very large air force, and they're fighting what's essentially a proxy war with Iran in Yemen. But they're not doing that much to fight ISIS. And it's like, well, guys, this is in your neighborhood, right? This is your homegrown problem. Why aren't you doing more? Why are you expecting France, the United States, and Canada to do more than you are? So I think that also is troubling to me. That I think the United States should step in a humanitarian way, but we can't constantly clean up everyone else's problems if they're not going to.
Jordan has taken more
Jordan has done a lot
than any other.
Well, they border
country.
Syria, so that's the place the refugees are going to go.
so
They're in
does-
Turkey.
Yeah, but Jordan has taken more than 1 million, like 1.5 million, and we're talking about taking 10,000.
Right.
Well, when I was in Italy, I actually asked one person in Naples, why was it so? Naples is just very dirty and run down. And I asked, and this woman said, who worked there, said, we have so many refugees. There's this huge influx, and other countries around us, like Greece, have closed their borders and they have nowhere else to go but here, and we have no idea what to do. But we can't say no, you can't come. I mean, our policies to this point have been, not to cut them off. But seriously, if everybody is not sharing this load, it does get dumped on.
Right. Okay. Here's an interesting question. Based on this and coming out of this, tangentially to this, does religion give rise to violence, or is it the other way around? Does violence give rise to religion?
Are we talking about like the chicken and the egg?
Kind of.
Yeah, it's
Kind
kind
of.
of because can't it be both?
It's often argued, I saw this article this morning and didn't have time to send it to you guys, so you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's often argued that religion gives rise to violence, but what if it were really the other way around? What if violence actually gave rise to religion? So argued the French anthropologist and philosopher René Girard, who died November 4th. He was described as the Darwin of the human sciences. Girard acknowledged that violence is at the heart of religious rituals and rhetoric. Sacrifice, animal sacrifice, human sacrifice. He was well aware that religious passions can lead to terrible persecutions, but Girard provocatively claimed that violence is even more primordial in human life than religion. It is violence, in fact, that leads to religion. He argued, this is an interesting argument, he argued that religious practices function to sublimate, regulate, and discharge human violence in controlled rituals.
I absolutely agree.
Can you unpack that?
Hang on. Oh, yeah, he unpacks it. Where does violence come from? According to Girard, violence stems from the nature of human desire itself. Although we like to imagine that our desires stem from our own unique personalities, in reality, he claimed, we catch our desires from other people. Unfortunately, the social nature of desires means that all desire is rivalrous, based in rivalry.
That sounds like Genesis.
It does, kind of, yeah. We cannot help but covet our neighbor's possessions. Soon we are all in direct conflict over scarce resources, and the war of all against all has begun.
That was what I was saying.
Everybody's fighting everybody for resources. We want everybody's stuff. Now, this is where Girard gets interesting. According to Girard's theory, our individual rivalries suddenly become focused on a single victim. And the war of all against all gives way to the war of all against one. A random scapegoat is selected on the basis of some social stigma and then killed. At once, a society riven by myriad conflicts comes together in harmony. All social order, claimed Girard, stems from the unity of a lynch mob. To commemorate the social harmony created by the murder of the scapegoat, the original murder is symbolically reenacted through the sacrificial killing of human and then later animal victims. In this way, the violent impulses which led to the scapegoat murder are sublimated and controlled by religious ritual, especially ritual sacrifice. So, now, are you with me?
I'm trying.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
I'm working on it.
Social unity is achieved by the lynch mob.
Okay.
Girard's theory of sacred violence takes its most controversial turn when he claims that biblical religion, especially Christianity, is a radical attack on the whole logic of religious violence. After all, according to the Gospels, Jesus was killed by the Jewish high priests and by the Romans as a scapegoat and as a sacrificial victim. That God himself became the victim of both scapegoat murder and sacrificial killing demonstrates, says Girard, that the central message of the Gospels is to overturn once and for all the whole machinery of scapegoat murder and sacrificial violence.
That sounds like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Well, it's very biblical.
Yeah, sounds like it to me.
So
Was he a Christian?
I don't know. He may have been Catholic. He was French. I don't know. So what lessons can we draw from Girard that are germane to the latest outrage in Paris? Germaine Girard. That's a different guy. Given that Girard believes our desires stem from social rivalry, his warning is, quote, choose your enemies carefully because you will become like them.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever you decide is your enemy, you will end up behaving similarly to either compete for the same resource or to stop them from getting your resource.
So what he's argued here is essentially a more nuanced and complicated version of what I try to articulate in With, which is that religion derives its sense of control by trying to manage the violence and insecurity and fear we feel in a dangerous world. That's the same argument at its root.
Girard unfashionably denied that there is a significant moral difference between parties to violent conflict. Both are caught up in a demonic logic that will end in mutual destruction. Near the end of his life, Girard worried about the deadly rivalry of nations armed with nuclear weapons. He came to the view, first articulated by Martin Luther King Jr., that our choice today is between nonviolence and non-existence.
It's what Gandhi said. If you practice an eye for an eye, eventually the whole world is blind.
That was a pretty good quote.
Did he get that from Girard?
No, I think it's from the Old Testament and then from Jesus, and then he did his own little spin on it. But this is what the Sermon on the Mount is all about, where Jesus takes the Old Testament law and says, "You've heard it said, an eye for an eye," or love your neighbor, but I tell you, love your enemy. He goes to the heart of the matter and says, look, this isn't about just restraining evil. This is about extracting it from yourself. And and that's essentially what the cross is about. It's putting an end to that
I'm not
once
sure,
for all
I'm not sure how
system.
much archaeological support he has for the scapegoat theory. How often do you find a warring factions turning together on? I suppose that where you find a common enemy, and to a certain extent, that's how that's how Muhammad brought together the Arabian Peninsula, which was just fractions and tribal warlords, and got everybody on the same page.
Right.
No, we need a common enemy, bigger. And some people have theorized that was one of the causes of the Crusades, was that the Pope was looking at the constant fighting of European tribes and saying, let's have a common enemy. Let's get Jerusalem back. Can we all agree on that? And then stop fighting each other. So the only way to create unity is to give people someone else to fight, a bigger enemy. And then if you can kill them, then if you spend your time rehashing how you killed them and wasn't it wonderful, you can maintain unity.
Well, I mean, that's true of American history as well. We had 13 fractured colonies in two significant regions between North and South, but they rallied around the common enemy of England.
Right.
And built a new centralized national identity around the fact that we're not England. And we defeated a monarch, the most powerful empire in the world, and we're going to be something different. And that lasted for 100 years before we went to war with each other.
Rehash it every 4th of July.
That's right.
Let's do that, and let's do Revolutionary War reenactments so we can remember, so we don't fight each other.
With each generation, you see that repeated. During our grandparents' and parents' generation, it was the Cold War. We are not communists.
Right.
And look at how our system is better than theirs, and it gives you a sense of identity and belonging. And since the end of the Cold War, there's been this question of, well, what is our national identity now? Who is our enemy?
What are we not now?
What are we not? And that's where radical Islam is
We're not radical Islam.
That's where the rhetoric of Franklin Graham and others comes from, to say, let's just paint it really broad because it gives us a sense of righteousness and identity. To say, we're not you, we're better, and you need to go away.
So maybe it's like the Pope during the Crusades. It really is, there is a noble intent to bring unity.
Yeah, but here's where it's kind of folding in on itself.
Yes.
Is we're becoming so fractured as a culture where almost like during the Civil War, it wasn't enough to say, well, we all defeated England together. It's those Northerners, they're the enemy. Or those slaveholders in the South, they're the enemy. And now it's, those liberals, they're the enemy. They're the problem. Or it's you Christian conservatives, you're the enemy. And so we're turning in on each other, and our identity is becoming not we're Americans, but we're conservative Americans, or we're red state Americans, or we're blue state or liberal. And that's not a good recipe for unity.
You know what? We need to talk about something hopeful, because I'm really feeling very
Really? You're feeling a little
hopeless.
down? How do you feel about white supremacists? There's a new religion of choice for white supremacists.
Great.
Did you hear? On Monday, 3 Virginia men were charged with plotting to attack and bomb black churches and Jewish synagogues, reportedly with the goal of triggering a race war.
Wait, when was this?
Monday.
This Monday? A week ago?
A week ago, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where? Virginia.
Virginia. 3 Virginia men. Suspects Ronald Cheney and Robert Doyle.
Any relation to Cheney?
I doubt it. Okay. Who FBI officials say were also plotting to kill a local jewelry dealer and rob an armored car, were outspoken white supremacists bound by a common desire. See, we need things to bring us together.
Like
we need
hatred of minorities.
Yes, to enact violence.
He just said yes. That's not
did
right.
I? Oh, what did you say?
I said like hatred of minorities.
Well, he was playing a role.
That is something that brings people together.
Okay.
Yes, that brought these two men together. I was agreeing on their behalf. They were bound by a common desire to enact violence against Jews and African Americans. But documents, how is it always the Jews and the African Americans?
Because they're non-Anglo,
they're minorities.
Saxon.
They're small minority
peoples.
Well,
what about Hawaiians? They're not Anglo-Saxon.
Well,
no one ever goes off on the Hawaiians.
You know why? Because no one's threatened by a ukulele, Phil.
There are a lot of like Samoans in the NFL that are huge guys.
Aren't those Girl Scout cookies?
Samoans.
yes, they are actually.
Not the ones that play in the
Samoas.
NFL.
Oh. That's why they're the coconut ones, like coconut
They're like
and
linemen,
chocolate.
like really big Samoans. They could take over. Why aren't we worried about the Samoans? Why the Jews and the Africans?
Do you really want to get into the history, Phil?
No.
You could even answer it yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. But like Doyle and Cheney, a number of white supremacists are abandoning Christianity for a very different religion. Traditionally, most American white supremacists have claimed to be Christian. This is changing. Do you know what they're moving?
I'm not disappointed with that.
But we don't want Christianity to go into a decline. We need
All things to all people.
we need butts and seats, man. A number of white supremacists are abandoning Christianity for a very different religion, Odinism, sometimes called
Is it smelly?
Asatru.
That's odorism. This is Odin.
The faith, which has several different strains, is a modern expression of an ancient polytheistic Nordic belief system that reveres a slew of gods such as Thor. Thor's coming back, and not just to a theater near you. Most of its U.S. adherents, many of whom self-describe as heathens, are nonviolent and inclusive, more concerned with preaching virtues than calling for a race war.
Oh, come on.
Sure, all pagans are nonviolent.
They're just misunderstood.
Norse paganism, once the religion of Vikings, is currently undergoing a revival among young residents of Iceland, where it is recognized as a state religion. Yet an unsettlingly virulent strain of Odinism has coalesced, that was really hard to say that line, can I just say that? In the United States over the past few decades, attracting white supremacists who see it as more purely white than Christianity. How could anything be more purely white than a religion founded by a Jewish guy?
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East. I don't, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing?
I don't know.
Mark Potok, a senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center, you know them? Mm-hmm. They're the guys that decide what's a hate group and what's not a hate group, explained that many joined the fledgling faith as a way of criticizing Christianity. And this is Mark talking. From white supremacists' point of view, they embrace these neo-pagan religions because they see them as antithetical to Christianity and Judaism. They say, what did the Jews and Christians do? They made these religions about turning the other cheek and caring for the poor. They see Christianity as a feminized, weak, self-destructive theology created by Jews and forced on white people who were by nature supposedly very different.
You know, what's interesting is Hitler had a very similar
You
argument.
did it! You evoked Hitler!
I was waiting.
I did, I lose. But it's true. Hitler saw traditional Christianity as antithetical to his Aryan ideals, and therefore, because it was turning the other cheek and intolerant of the poor and the weak and on, and he wanted a race that was, survival of the fittest.
And that's why, did you know this? Part of his plan for the German church was when they took over the world and they completely infiltrated the German church would be to change the iconography of the German church to get rid of the cross. Because the cross, he felt, was a symbol of failure.
Right.
Of weakness, of a man dying.
Wow.
And that was, he felt, part of what was undermining the strength of the Germanic peoples. Was Christianity.
Wow.
You can understand then why the neo-Nazis would be drawn to Odinism, because it's about strength and power. And
so Fraser Glenn Cross, who shot and killed 3 people outside a Jewish organization last year, also professed a firm belief in Odinism. Like many right-wing Odinists, Cross explained that his opposition to Christianity is rooted in the idea that it was a trick invented by Jews to enslave the white masses. And here's a good quote. This is
Come on.
Jews made up Christianity to enslave white people. Christianity is the second biggest trick the Jews ever played on us. The biggest was legalized abortion.
What?
how did that happen? How did the Jews pull that off?
I just forget about the fact that the Jews did that. Just the fact that legalized abortion is bigger than Christianity.
Okay.
As a trick.
As a trick.
As a trick.
You know what would
Is
have
this
been
guy
even
smoking
funnier?
something?
Well, what would have been really funny is
What?
if he had said the second biggest trick they ever pulled on us was Christianity, and the first is Obamacare,
Oh, yeah, that's
because that seems to be everybody's boogeyman.
but Obama isn't Jewish.
But he's black.
Yeah,
They're both problems.
not to us Christian.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
That's good.
It's.
I was kind of playing along, like,
I'm trying to get new health insurance right now. It's horrible.
Really?
Oh my gosh! I want to move to Canada.
that's not good.
I know.
You're
it's
not supposed
horrible.
to say that.
I'm just saying for the health insurance.
You want
I love America.
want socialized medicine.
I love America.
So you want socialized
No, I don't want
medicine.
socialized medicine.
You just
I just
said
want,
you want social.
I
You
just
said
want,
you want to move somewhere that has socialized medicine.
I just want somewhere where it's simpler. And hopefully cheaper, but simpler.
It was really simple in Nazi Germany, Sky.
Health insurance was a bullet.
There was only one form you had to fill out,
All right, I'm just saying.
and it
it's
said
really,
Heil Hitler. And if you didn't fill it out, you didn't get any health insurance. And that was it. Okay, today followers of the tradition are few in number, but represent a notable percentage of violent white supremacists. Ryan Giroux, a white supremacist who allegedly murdered one person and wounded 5 others in March, bears a tattoo of Thor's hammer on his chin. Maurice Thompson McKaylee, who was convicted in 2012 for trying to burn down a historic black church in Virginia, reportedly now belongs to an Odinic wolf cult in Lynchburg.
Oh, my word.
Well, they chose an interesting place to live.
In Lynchburg.
Yeah.
Speakers at a November gathering of white supremacists in Washington, D.C. wore the hammer symbol, Thor's hammer, around their necks.
So what do they think of Marvel?
What the heck? They don't like it. They don't like it. Oh, they're mad at the movies because they cast Idris Elba as a Norse god, and he's black. And that messes up Norseism.
Wow.
So what have we learned today, kids?
There's a lot of crazy people in the world.
I was going to say that. There's crazies all over.
And they can use religion to mask or promulgate their craziness.
Yeah, so should we try to get rid of religion and then all violence will disappear? Oh, no, wait, Girard, our Frenchman, said violence predated religion. It may have produced certain religions. So where does that leave us?
Honestly, this is where it leaves us.
Christian, help us out.
There is no solution.
Oh.
Except
Okay.
to put our hope in Christ and our expectations for the future and health and wellness and happiness on the promises of the Bible. That's where I'm going to stick my money.
Is this where you're going to stick your little Norse hammer?
Yes.
I'll add a little something to that.
Okay.
It is all those things, and then it is people who believe those things taking them out into the world and enacting them.
Exactly.
So that
I meant to say that.
I just wrote a devotional for tomorrow, and it's partly a reflection on what happened in Paris. And I think throughout this week I'm gonna keep doing that, not just about Paris, but these ideas. That's what.
Well, that's why we're here, Sky, is to give you more fodder for your.
Well,
your
I just think sometimes I'll do a series through a passage of scripture or whatever, but this is just so much on my mind, and everyone's talking about it. And I think it warrants some prayer and reflection on what does this mean for believers? How do you respond to this without succumbing to despair and still remaining hopeful? But there's a lot of messed up things going on.
And it's really out of our control to change it or to make it stop. And so I just don't think we can put our efforts and our hopes in, trying to control that chaos.
Solving the chaos problem.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I do think there are things
what would happen if every Christian just said, "Oh, forget it"?
No. I think there are things
Christian
that
says it's time to give up.
Yeah.
I think there are things that we can do, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying as far as the way we think about things, and wanting to, I don't know. I just think that as the way we think about it needs to be, my job is to think about who I am and what I can do and how I treat others right in front of me and the things I contribute my time and my money in to make this world a better place. But, to expect that I'm going to go on this crusade and change all of these things.
It's not through human strength alone that these things are going to change.
That's why
it
he always says things so much better than I do and so much more easily.
That's why he gets to write a daily devotional.
I know.
Hey, and I got to let everyone know that I have a new ebook coming out.
I saw that in the newsletter. What is that all about?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, if you listen to this podcast on Tuesday when it comes out, you have like 1 day left. If you go to my website, skychatine.com, you can sign up to win a copy of the ebook for free. You get a 7-day free trial of the devotional, and you get a chance of winning the ebook for free before it releases on December 1st. So you can do that. And then the other one is the book does come out December 1st. It's about a 10,000 word ebook. It'll be on Amazon. I don't even know what we're pricing it at yet, but it's called How Churches Became Cruise Ships. It's based on a series of blog posts I wrote last year that got a lot of traffic, so I expanded them and talk about it's called How Churches Became Cruise Ships, a survival guide for the seasick Christian.
Ooh, I like that. You're so creative.
That's nice. Is there a picture of a Christ follower vomiting on the cover, like leaning over the railings?
No,
of their
but there is a
church?
railing.
There's a railing.
There's balconies and railings on the side of the cruise ship, but no one barfing.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How is Galaxy Buck doing these days?
It's off and running.
It is?
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
go
We don't
get
have
Galaxy
that much
Buck
information.
for
Get
Christmas.
For Christmas. You need Galaxy Buck for Christmas.
I have my bell off.
It's the only way that you'll have a Merry Christmas. All other attempts will fail.
Yeah.
Except for giving out subscriptions to Sky's daily devotional.
Yeah, and no, but seriously, and thank you, Christian, for bringing that up. You guys, we've been doing this for almost 4 years. This is a completely free podcast. We don't even have any advertising
Wait,
on it.
We're not charging for this?
Nothing.
No
so
wonder I'm
truly,
broke.
if there are those of you out there who want to show some level of support for what we do here, I don't know why you would, but if you do, go out and get a copy of Galaxy Buck or my devotional or book or whatever, and
hire me.
Yeah.
hire Christian
Yeah.
to do voiceover work.
In fact,
and
buying
acting.
our merchandise is the only way you can prevent us from talking about toplessness again.
Yeah.
Thank
That
you.
is not true. I'm going to work on that endeavor, so
It's
no
been
worries.
a long time.
Yeah, I don't even know
I
what
think
the
we're
word
done
means
with it for
anymore.
good, so
Yeah.
you don't have to worry.
Next
we
year-
lost a whole bunch of listeners because of it, so we're not bringing that back.
And I was even in Times Square this week, and I didn't mention it at all.
Let's get out of here. I gotta
Okay.
go.
Oh, a Norse is a Norse, of course, and nobody messes with angry Norse because they'll take their hammer of Thor and and take it to the Jews. So if you are Norse, be peaceful, of course, because nobody likes a cranky Norse. And if you're so fed up, of course, why do you need to choose? Why is it always the Jews? Can't we just get along? Remember, Hitler was Norse.
That was very interesting.
See you next.
Wow.
Try to mix it up. Do something different every now
Okay.
and then.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.